All right, if you're like me in the last 6 months or past year, actually, where the previous year I worked from home 90% of the time, then the following year, in November, they told me that it wasn't possible to do my job from my house and that I had to return to the office full time. I was reprimanded in my review a few weeks ago from for working from home after 3:30. So I would go do some company errands in my own car and I'd come back and they're like, you can't do that anymore. You have to be sitting here the whole effing time. And I was furious. I still am furious because the amount of time that it takes me to go back and forth between the office to go drop off things, then come back and then go home, it's half an hour in heavy traffic to get to the place where I need to go to. It's half an hour to get back to the office, and then it's half an hour to get back home from the office after just sitting there for 15 minutes. But that's how harsh it is. The back to work mandate has caused hundreds of terminations at my current Evil Corp. Because during the pandemic, a lot of people thought that this was going to be permanent. And as every CEO has said in corporate America, oh, the work from home thing, it was just because of COVID. No one's actually allowed to work from home. Because if you're working at home, guess what? You can be shaking hands with the governor with one hand and pretending to work at home. And I think that's really what it comes down to is corporate America realizes that a lot of the time that they're paying people, they're not actually working. We come to work, we pretend to work, we spend a lot of time in the bathroom, we spend time talking to our coworkers about non-work related things. We don't focus on work. America tuned out of work. And so corporations are struggling with this because as I was looking for videos for this, they've lost trillions of dollars in productivity with millions of workers who no longer care about work. And for corporate America, for an employee to show up, to have the audacity to show up in the office and not care, they just can't possibly wrap their brain around it. How can an employee show up to a corporation, make a crap salary, and not care about work? And I've been doing these videos on quiet quitting for years, and of course, eventually, you have to join the quiet quitters because they're not going to raise your wages, they're not going to increase your benefits, and believe me, you don't have any job security. As I've seen thousands of people leave my current Evil Corp. Since I started there, I've lost maybe 3,000 people, and there are only 1,400 total employees. So you do the math. Corporations can't hold on to anyone good. So instead of getting someone good and expensive, they'll just buy a bunch of next to minimum wage people that you're paying $40,000 or below, usually much lower. I would say that the average entry level salary at any corporation right now would be about 25,000. And then they wonder why there's no loyalty. If you're constantly having to look for another job in order to get a pay raise, you have no loyalty from your employees. And so I was actually going to do a video on Walmart, but I did the full outline. I highlighted everything I was going to talk about, and then I came to the conclusion that that topic wouldn't work on this channel. Even though Walmart's notorious for its poor treatment of workers, its lousy hours, toxic working conditions, and no possibility of getting an increase in pay. As I was told, for many years while working at a megalomart, you only get a raise when the minimum wage goes up. Otherwise, they don't care about you. And mandates to for in-office work are ridiculous. And I don't understand it. I still don't get why they have to be this way to the workers, other than they don't care about you, they don't respect you, and they're still, frazzled at employees that come to work and just don't feel like working. And I would say that 99% of the population of workers doesn't come to work and feels like working. We just come because you give us money, and unfortunately, we have bills. In a more perfect world, no one would work. And can you imagine a world where we couldn't have rich people in it? Yeah, that's what would happen if the proletariat decided, you know what? I'm not going to show up. And the only thing we can do to show our resentment towards Evil Corp is show up and do a bunch of work theater and live by the phrase, you pretend to pay me and I pretend to work. If you don't like it, then we both need to stop pretending and that we're in a relationship together because we're not. And the more you think that there's going to be loyalty, the proletariat is always looking for a better opportunity. Regardless, it's human nature to look for a more comfortable surroundings. And if your current job is making you live in a place like where I live, you're not comfortable. In fact, you're uncomfortable all the freaking time. You know why? Because you're poor. And poor people are uncomfortable. Poor people don't live the kind of life that a corporate executive does. We're always thinking, we always have poor people problems. Everything from food, shelter to our relationships. If we can even get a relationship. Yesterday, someone left this comment in the down below in one of my videos, and they said the difference between an incel and a femcel is femcels choose to be single because they're waiting for better resources. Johnny Sixpack just wants to get pie. He doesn't really care. As long as you're willing to bend over, he doesn't care. The femcel wants you to have a fat bank account, be a good-looking guy, and spend money on her like it's going out of business. You know, you're gonna spend money on her so she can look good. And I've actually had this said to my face by a femcel before. I want to look like a rich man takes care of me. But guess what? Johnny Sixpack's not a rich man. Johnny Sixpack's not interested in dealing with your attitude, and Johnny Sixpack doesn't have the deep pockets that the femcel wants. So what does she do? She will wait for, and you're talking about 15, 20, who knows how many these dudes have of these femcels that are getting taken care of and they're not in a real relationship. And then they get to 40 and they're like, why didn't I never meet a guy that would marry me? Because you wouldn't marry the guy that would marry you. Johnny Sixpack isn't marriage material, but he is a warm sausage. That's really what it comes down to. We have a society that's falling apart because everyone thinks that things should be different. I think that things should be different. But what I'm getting at is this isn't working for either one of us. I'm not getting enough pie to be happy. And Susie Rottencrotch over there, femcelling away, waiting for the perfect man to spend money on her and then wonder why he has so many other women. Well, guess what? They all want the same thing that you want, his money. Which I'm going to transition back into the main topic of this video. So here we go with an opening monologue. Hi, it's me, your friendly coworker who is underpaid and oh my gosh, I cannot the phrasing. Sometimes I'll read something and the phrasing. Hi, it's me, your friendly, overworked, underpaid corporate hamster. Back again to tell you something that will make your blood boil faster than that $6 Starbucks latte you can't afford. Did you know that the average CEO now makes 400 times what the average worker does? Yeah, I know, old news. But here's the kicker. They're barely even working. So I've heard a lot of different statistics for what CEOs make. I've heard up to 1,000 times more than the average person working at the bottom. But what was really strange is I recently was at a place where all of the stores that used to be there were gone. Right down to the Starbucks. You could see where the Starbucks used to be, but it's not there anymore. And I was kind of looking at it and I was like, wow, they shut down everything. Like the Arizona Mills Mall no longer has a Starbucks in it. because poor people shop at that mall. Where poor people are at, you don't have Starbucks. And I I was kind of shocked. I think it was Mello and I that walked around in that mall a few weeks ago, and there was nowhere to go to get a Starbucks. Anyhow, uh, I'm off on a tangent. Has nothing to do with the rest of this video. Anyhow, let's get into our three talking points. I'm a little absent-minded today because I had to spend so much time doing research to make a video. There's just nothing out there right now that is material that I could use for one of my style videos. So I spent a lot of time just kind of gathering my thoughts, processing data, and this is what I came up with. So here we go. CEOs like the Starbucks and Victoria's Secret executives are allowed to work remotely or part time while imposing strict return to office mandates on regular employees. This hypocrisy fuels resentment, especially as workers are forced to commute and sacrifice work life balance while their leaders enjoy private jets and flexible schedules. So, this is something that I've talked to A about in the live streams the last few days because she feels like her company is going to force her back to work. Her commute is 2 hours one way. I do not believe that corporations really need to force workers back into situations in which they're spending 2 hours of their day getting to work. And that doesn't even take into account the extra time that you need in order to get ready to go to work. Because if you work from home, like the year that I worked from home for the same company in the same exact job, I never took off my pajamas. I lived in my pajamas until I couldn't stand the smell, and then I took them off and put on new ones. But I didn't get ready for work. Work starts at 8. I'd wake up at 7:59. I'd roll out of bed into my office chair, and bam, I was working. Instead, I now have to get up. Instead of getting up at 7:59 to get to work at 8, I now have to get up at between 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning to be at work at 8. Because now I actually have to waste my time. And you're not getting paid for this extra time to commute and get ready for work. And you're going to a place that you don't even like. That's the worst part. Imagine getting ready for the date you don't care about. The meeting that you have to, that you're not interested in. And again, remember, most of the proletariat has tuned out a long, long time ago. People don't show up at work, bright eyed and bushy tailed anymore. We show up at work with one thing on our mind: we hate Evil Corp. We resent it for decisions like this that are just designed to make our lives more miserable. Think of it. They don't pay you more because they don't want to. And since 65% of the working class people right now that are in jobs where they're stuck, including myself, I can't get a job interview. I can't find a job that I'd actually want to do. So I'm going to go from one evil corp to the next evil corp, and it's going to be just as miserable there. Because what are you doing at work? All we do at work is we wait to get fired. That's what work is. You pretend to work, and for your sacrifices, the thank you is the pink slip. We all know that. We all know that the corporation can afford to do better by paying us more, offering us more of what we want. But everything we want, including working from home, isn't part of Evil Corp's vision. They don't care what workers want. They tell you what you want. And I don't think that's a healthy relationship. Every relationship with Evil Corp is an abusive relationship, and we all know that. And you know why? Because Evil Corp hits you because it loves you. Just like Johnny Sixpack does. Because that's what you do. And it's not going to be a system that's going to change. You're not going to get hit over the head and then get a kiss afterwards and say, "Oh, I'm sorry for hitting you. It was just, I was just having a bad day." No. The abusive relationship is fundamental to the way that it functions. Just like Johnny Sixpack. Johnny Sixpack has a temper. You love Johnny Sixpack. It doesn't matter how many times he wallops you over the head. You don't care. You don't care how many times he comes home smelling of other women. You don't care how many times he comes home drunk. And you have to let Johnny Sixpack borrow money because obviously he's broke and he knows you work. Everything about Johnny Sixpack is a red flag, just like it is with corporate America. Moving on to talking point number two. Modern CEOs are increasingly less involved in the day to day operations of their companies. Instead, they function as public figures or influencers. Wow, two of my favorite things. Focusing on public relations and brand perception rather than actual management. This shift benefits, oh no, this is going to be a surprise to you. It benefits shareholders and board members, but under alienates and undervalues the average worker. Susie Rottencrotch isn't happy at work, but guess what? It doesn't matter, Susie. Get back to work. And Johnny Sixpack, we know what you want. At the end of the day, when you leave Evil Corp, you're gonna go have some beer, some Prol beer, get some Prol Sports in, and you're gonna go where Susie's at. Her part-time job behind the Taco Bell where you're hoping to score some. But guess what? Susie Rottencrotch hasn't been showing up at work behind the Taco Bell because she's angry that she has to work. She's angry that she doesn't get everything she wants, and she's mostly angry that Johnny Sixpack won't give her what she wants. Sometimes you have to say no to that selfish beep, beep, beep. I've had to say no many times because if you don't say no to your femcel, then she's just going to continue to take because she doesn't know any better. That's all she's ever done in her whole life. If you have any questions about how that works, go watch your favorite streamer on Twitch, your lady streamer on Twitch, and remember how many times she asks you to donate to the stream. Because that's how all women function. And you're just kind of like, well, if that's the way of the world, then we're all screwed. That's the reality of this channel. We are all screwed, and you come here so I can tell you that you're screwed. You know that you're screwed, but you don't want to believe it, so you come back to this channel and realize that you're screwed more. And that's the perpetual cycle that I have with my audience members. People don't want to believe the way that things are. Yes, the corporations are screwing us. They're exploiting us. They're treating us like bad dates. And just like bad dates, we don't care. They don't like that we don't care because that destroys the morale at work. It cuts into profits, and they function at a much lower efficiency because once the proletariat stops caring, and let me throw in an example really quick from working at Walmart. I have Walmart on the brain because I just did an entire lineup like this. At Walmart, as part of your training before you get to go onto the sales floor, they try to indoctrinate you into believing this stupid lie, which is when you work in a department, you should treat that job like you're the owner. Pretend that you are fully responsible for this area, which in some weird way you are. But at the end of the day, they don't compensate you like the owner. They want you to work like the owner for the minimum wage. And that's every corporation. They want to instill care into the employees. You can't make people care when they're spending their time at work and after work wondering about how they're going to make this tiny paycheck work, right? You look at the tiny paycheck. My first paycheck at Walmart was $300 for 2 weeks. How am I supposed to live on that? They don't care. Remember, abusive relationship. They don't care. And therefore, you don't care and they don't understand. I saw the look on the general manager's face for more than 2 years where he just didn't understand why workers came to work and did a bad job. All right, talking point number three. Board of directors and investors often tolerate absentee CEOs because these leaders boost stock prices and fight unionization even if they aren't actively managing the business. The focus on symbolic leadership highlights a systemic issue where employees' well being and fairness are sacrificed for profits and optics. So, this is big because when I worked at Walmart, any mention of union by any employee was met with extreme prejudice. And that meant that anyone caught even saying it, if someone turned you in because you were talking about it, you would be fired immediately. If a store gathered enough momentum to start a union, the store would immediately be closed. The corporate people would come there, shut down the store, fire all the staff, and they would either start all over or keep the store closed. And that was the constant fear that we lived in every single day when I worked at that store. Is the general manager would tell the employees this on a regular basis. Don't try to change things because you will lose your job. Anyone who mentions that word will lose their job. And I know it doesn't sound right. It seems like, oh, that sounds like one of those other countries, one of those bad countries. That sounds like something that they would do in North Korea. No, it happens right here. And retaliation against workers who try to improve conditions in corporations is brutal. I mean, just the way that whistleblowers somehow come to a bitter end in this country. Somehow it was natural causes. You look at the at the pictures and it's like, I didn't know that giant bruises were natural causes. But just as with anything else a corporation does, it functions in a gray area. Because in order to be $1 billion business, you've got to cut corners everywhere you can. And the first corner you're going to cut is labor. Because again, if you're not worth anything, they're not going to pay you anything. And that's their entire staff. They're not going to pay you anything. And so when you come to work and you're not getting paid anything, what do you think is going to be the outcome for every single person that's put into that situation where you're having to rely on food stamps in order to be able to make ends meet? Because the corporation that you work for is the largest retail in the world and still believes that workers should be on food stamps.